Now, the different words which are used in process costing technique, we have to understand. Input. In any process costing, that is processing, in the beginning, we have to have certain material. For example, I say, suppose it is a cloth manufacturing mill where input in the first process is the cotton. So in that process, the input is cotton, which is converted into thread. Now that thread goes to the weaving department. So for weaving department, input is the thread. Now when that thread is converted into gray cloth, that gray cloth is the input for the bleaching and dyeing process, where that gray cloth is colored and design is given and the way we want that to be for wearing. So input in every process is the material which is introduced at the beginning of the process, without which that process cannot start. Now, output is the actual production of that process, which is either directly transferred to the next process or it is sold from that process in the market. Now, expected output. This is very important. Every student has to understand expected output. If you don't understand, then you will do mistakes in process costing. Expected output is input in the beginning minus normal loss. Now, this normal loss is what? Normal loss is the wastage in any process which is anticipated. Any anticipated expected wastage in any process is normal loss. For example, say when that tailor says that he needs 2.5 meters to stitch one shirt. Understand, actually for stitching one shirt, say he requires 2.3 meter. But that 0.2 meter is a wastage, because when he has to do cutting as per the size of that particular person, then there is definitely going to be some wastage. Some cloth is going to be waste. So that wastage is there in every process. For example, in a production process, when the oil is used, certain oil gets evaporated after it is boiled. And there are so many other things. So in any production process, the things which are expected to go waste, it could be tangible, which you can see, or it could be intangible, which you cannot see, because if it goes in the air, you can't see it, but it is a wastage. So any anticipated or expected wastage is called as normal loss. Now, there are two types of normal loss. One, the loss which you can sell, which is tangible, and the other type of loss which you cannot sell, which is intangible. For example, let us take example of the garment. Now, in garment, when the shirts are made out of the cloth, there will be some wastage in terms of that remaining cloth, which is there because of the cutting. Now, these cloths are sold as chindi. Now, the chindi, which is sold by these garment people or by the tailor, is a sellable normal loss, which could be sold at some price in the market. But in any production process, say when the oil is evaporated, that oil was there, and then when that oil is used, or any particular, say, petrol or any other liquid is used, or say camphor or such type of materials are used, which just goes in the air, and you cannot have that in a tangible form. So it is just impossible to sell that. So whenever you don't have a tangible form of normal loss, you cannot sell it. So that is called as non-sellable normal loss. Now, what is abnormal loss and abnormal gain then? Abnormal loss is any loss which is more than the normal loss. For example, in any production process, we expect that, say, when input is say 10,000 units, and we expect that only say 500 units are expected to be lost as normal loss, then 10,000 minus 500 is our expected output. That is 9,500. So 5,000 should have been the normal loss. But when we come to know at the end of the process that actual loss is 600, that means over and above normal loss of 500, there is loss of 100 units. That extra loss of 100 units is called as abnormal loss. And this abnormal loss actually is differently valued and actually accounted for. That we'll see in the next slides. But then right now we have to understand abnormal loss is the loss which is over and above the normal loss. And when we can have that mathematically, where actual output is less, that means it was expected to be 9,500, but it is say 9,400, and expected output is say 9,500. So we say 100 unit more lost is abnormal loss. So when actual output is more, then it is abnormal gain that we'll see in the next para. But when actual output is less, then there is more loss, that is abnormal loss. Now abnormal gain. Abnormal gain is what? For example, input was 10,000 kilograms, 500 kilograms we expected to be lost, that was normal wastage. So our expected output was 10,000 minus 500, 9,500. But when actual production took place, we came to know that 9,600 is the output. So actual loss is not 500, 400. So normal loss of 500 is reduced to 400. So 100 units of normal loss is reduced. And reduction in the normal loss, which we call saving in the normal loss, is nothing but abnormal gain, because actual output is more than the expected output. So whenever we have less loss than the normal loss, that saving in the loss is called as abnormal gain. So these are the different terms which we use very often in process costing. So we must know the meaning of these terms. Now let us take example. Now, as I said, say in process A, 10,000 was the input. Normal loss expected 5%, so 500. Now, when you minus that 500, input minus normal loss 9,500 was the expected output. Now, suppose actual output is given to you as 9,200. That means actual output is less. So that means there is more loss of 300 units, which is over and above the normal loss. So it is abnormal loss. So actually, we had a loss of 700 units, 800 units. 10,000 was the input, 9,200 is output. So 800 lost. Out of 800 units lost, 500 is the normal loss, and extra 300 units loss is abnormal loss. Now, how the cost per unit of any process is calculated, we'll see that in the next slide. But just I have given you a formula. It is debit side of the total, means debit side total column of the cost minus credit side cost total divided by expected output. It is always like this. So take total of the debit column minus total of the credit column divided by expected output. That gives you cost per unit. This cost per unit is very important, because at this cost per unit, we value the closing stock of that process. And at this cost per unit, we value the abnormal gain and abnormal loss units. And at this cost per unit, we transfer the units to the next process. So from this point of view, this cost per unit is very important. Formula we should never forget. It is debit cost total minus credit cost total divided by expected output that we have calculated in point number 3. And then that cost per unit, once you have the unit, say 300 abnormal loss into CPU 250, that is 75,000 is the value of the abnormal loss. Now its second process, say 9,200 is the actual output of process A, that becomes the input of process B 9,200. 5% of 9,200 is say 460. So 8740 is the expected output, but actual output is more. And when actual output is more than the expected 8740 output, difference is what? It is abnormal gain. So in this process B, we have abnormal gain of 260 units. And again, how we have the cost per unit? Debit total minus credit total divided by expected output, say 8740, and say I have given here 300, say is the CPU. So 260 abnormal gain units into 300 cost per unit. The value of abnormal gain here is 78,000. This is the way we have to do working, and this is the format. So I have just given you this format, the way you have to do the working for every process in process costing.